The Wyoming rental laws are rules that influence almost every aspect of the landlord-tenant relationships in the state, from security deposit to eviction. Whichever side you're on, understanding these rules can save you time and money. We're eForms, the world's largest online database of fillable legal forms, and in this video we'll cover how Wyoming rental laws impact your rights, what the state's rental agreements can and can't do, and the eviction process in Wyoming. Watch all the way through to the end of this video to find a link to create a lease agreement that meets the state's requirements and that you can customize to meet your needs. The first thing to consider is, how do rental laws work? As in other states, rental laws are contained in the state code. In Wyoming, for example, the section regarding residential leases is called residential rental property. But the fact is that, for the majority of issues that might arise between a landlord and tenant, the solution won't be found in a law book. It will be found in the lease signed by the landlord and tenant. A lease agreement sets out the rights and responsibilities of a landlord and a tenant renting property, and it should be the first place that both parties turn to when there is some uncertainty or disagreement. Wyoming's rental laws come into play in a few instances. One, if there is a situation in which there is no lease agreement, they may help provide a kind of default rules. Two, if a lease agreement is unclear or ambiguous, they can help provide clarity. And three, on some occasions, they act as limits on what terms can be enforced in a lease agreement, even if both parties have agreed to it. So, what do rental laws say about lease agreements? In Wyoming, landlords and tenants have a lot of flexibility when it comes to crafting a lease agreement. For example, unlike many states, there are no limits on security deposits. There's also no limit on the fees a landlord can charge for late rent, although a fee so high that it may seem like a punishment is probably not enforceable. In either case, the important thing is including it in the lease agreement so that the landlord and the tenant can negotiate and agree on something. In Wyoming, most residential leases are standard leases that begin for an initial term of 1 year. A standard lease gives an overview of the terms between a landlord and tenant for the renting of property. A standard lease is commonly a 1-year fixed period and is the most widely used rental contract. After the initial year-long lease has expired, many leases convert into month-to-month leases, which renew automatically every month and terminate when either party provides notice. Again, Wyoming leaves this up to the parties. There is no requirement for the number of days of notice that must be provided. This too is something landlords and tenants can sign off on a lease agreement. What about things that Wyoming rental laws do require? Although Wyoming doesn't limit how much a landlord can charge for a security deposit, it does require that any deposit be returned within 30 days of the end of the tenancy or 15 days of receiving a forwarding address from the tenant, whichever comes later. There are also some fairly detailed requirements about landlord obligations for personal property that tenants leave behind after the lease has ended. Check the link in the video description for further details. Wyoming rental laws also determine what happens in an eviction. Eviction is the legal process of removing a tenant for violating a term of a lease, and to go through with it, landlords need to provide tenants with notice of what's happening. Although most states have different timelines for the amount of notice that is required that vary based on the term that was violated, in Wyoming, all violations, whether for failure to pay rent or some other issue, require a 3-day notice. Like other states, rental laws in Wyoming can seem complex, but understanding them can have big benefits. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos explaining other relevant property law topics.